Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Kingsman Sports Podcast, episode number 22. We had a week off, kind of. We had that shorter episode. I hope you went and checked that out for our MLB prediction. We went through the entire bracket, but of course, now we know who will be playing in the divisional series for both the American League and the National League. Prediction wise, we both did pretty solid. I guess you went 50%. I went 3 out of 4. Not too shabby. I don't think either of us lost any team.
Our
We
AL.
had really
We
in charge. Spot on.
Yes.
Spot on. And we gave the Blue Jays a game we should have known better. So that was our bad there.
let's
hop in.
We'll talk about it here in a bit.
We're going to start with the National League because they did have the one series that went 3 games.
Yes.
Jacob, the meltdown's complete for the New York Mets. They are done
complete
playing baseball. The Padres take 2 of 3 from the New York Mets, win that series. The Mets are done. Padres moving on to play the Dodgers. But I mean, I feel like this is more about the Mets. While the Padres, they looked really good. Starting pitching looked solid. You and I talked about it. The decision to not start Jacob deGrom game 1, especially looking back on it now, is a really bad decision. Max Scherzer was just downright awful in that outing. I'm not going to say Chris Bassett was terrible, but he wasn't, a stellar guy that you want pitching in a big game like that. But for the Padres, I mean, everything was working. Joe Musgrove, who I love his comment saying that he wants to win one that feels earned, referencing, the ring he got with the Houston Astros. That one's not good to him anymore. He wants to win a new one. But this is about the Mets' just epic collapse in September. It's kind of shocking that it's now they're done playing baseball.
And having Scherzer be the one that you go with. I mean, you had mentioned as far as a number 2 goes, that's a number 1 for a lot of teams. And so that was shocking to me. It really was, to just see him get rocked by those Padres in a game that I told you the Padres had no business in winning, but I think that the Padres were hearing that from everyone. I think the Padres were hearing that from the Mets when they're like, we aren't even giving you DeGrom. You don't deserve DeGrom. We're saving DeGrom for the Dodgers because we're going to need him when we get there after we finish wiping the floor with you. I think, they took that personally and they were, they did what they needed to do.
Yeah, Scherzer gave up 7 runs in that game on 4 home runs, just 5 innings. Yu Darvish looked super good, by the way. So Yu Darvish, definitely a guy that the Padres can use as this one goes on. Blake Snell still looked a little bit shaky for the Padres. Still doesn't look like the same guy we saw in Tampa Bay. But game 3 is the one I really dialed in on. It's the one I watched from start to finish. Joe Musgrove looked sensational, but these bats look like they're finally starting to wake up. But these guys aren't trying to play hero. You saw Juan Soto lay down a sacrifice bunt in game 3 just to move that runner over, and it ended up working out because Manny Machado came up and drove him in. These guys, I'm not sure if they were doing it before where they were playing more of, I'm a superstar, I'm going to go win this thing for us. And now they're playing as we got to come together and get this job done. But Padres, they look better in this series than I think they've looked at all since the trade deadline when they got Juan Soto and Josh Bell.
And maybe that's what it takes, playing that baseball in. If we get on base more than the other team, if we score more than the other team, we just got to play that station to station baseball and pick up these runs where we can. And that's surprising because, you look at that lineup and that is a hard hitting home run lineup. Heard it way too many times. Slam Diego. And so, yeah, I think that you're right. They might have kind of gotten caught up in that. Okay, I'm going to take care of business and this is, I'm going to be my own RBI here. And you just got to do what you need to do with, let's be honest, a superior team. And they're going home and you're going to play the Dodgers, who is another superior team. But if you can do that to one, we'll see.
Never say never. Yeah, the
Exactly.
Mets, by the way, in those 3 games went 4 for 23 with runners in scoring position. It's never going to get it done in a
Yeah.
3 game series. Absolutely
Yeah.
brutal, especially when you're not hitting the long ball. Let's jump into that series real quick. The Padres and the Dodgers. They're going to kick things off Tuesday, as well as the rest of the divisional series. We're going to learn about the little rest that these teams have that have a first round bye. I think we're going to learn about that Tuesday, see how all these teams come out. But the Dodgers, they have to just be super confident. They've beat up on the Padres for years now. Every time they hear, oh, the Padres, this is the time they're going to push the Dodgers. Dodgers just sit them right back down. I don't see it being any different this year. But at the same time, now the Padres have that momentum on their side. They're carrying it over. They just got a big postseason win. I'm interested. I think it's going to be a little bit tougher for the Dodgers than it is in the regular season to beat the Padres. I still think they just roll in this one. But like you said, never say never.
And I mean, I'm looking at the bracket, and a lot of people had, the Mariners in a similar situation, and then they're going against that Houston juggernaut after that rest, after they have the momentum. So you're right. I mean, I hate to count the Padres out for multiple reasons, just because of the symmetry there. But yeah, I mean, the Dodgers have just always swatted them down like a fly, and not just, record wise, wins wise, stats wise, but playing each other head to head wise. It's been unfair. It's been like a AAA team going against those Dodgers. And so, yeah, I am not changing my prediction of the Dodgers advancing this round. I had them beating the Mets, but I was shocked already. So we'll see what happens.
I don't see the Padres being able to beat the Dodgers. Interestingly enough, neither team has announced their game one starter. It makes a little more sense for the Padres to be like, we don't really have too many guys left. It could be Sean Manaea, I guess, would likely be the candidate there, while the Dodgers could go literally anybody in their starting rotation and feel pretty good about their chances to win that game. So we'll see who they go with there. And what I think is the more intriguing of the two National League divisional series. So let's hop up into the other one. Preview or recap the wild card real quick. Unfortunately, Albert Pujols, Yadier Molina, they are done playing Major League Baseball as the Phillies sweep the Cardinals. And I told you, we were texting about the blown game in game one. And then the Cardinals came out and just looked ugly game two. And I told you, I said that series was over when the Phillies came back to take the lead in the 9th inning in game one. And it looked like that was spot on because they had no life in them in game two. And the Phillies rotation looked really good in this series. I don't think you can overlook them. They can really give this team a chance to beat anyone if they can come out and perform like that every single game.
Yeah, that was one that I had to watch the replays on. Just a little side note, the MLB decided to do an international blackout on all playoff games this year at the last minute, even if you purchased the MLB yearly subscription. So that's been fun for me to get around. I haven't been able to watch the games live like I normally would want to, but I'll have to. I've heard YouTube is a good workaround, and we're pirates down here in Mexico, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, looking at the replays, when I saw just that meltdown at the end of that game, I wanted to blame Helsley. I mean, it's what you do in that position if a pitcher blows that save. And looking at the replays, there was just a total collapse of that entire team, the defense and the everything about it was they were beat. They were beat already, and like you said, that kind of carried into the next game. But the fans, I mean, just everything was done at that point, and it's a real shame because like I had mentioned, seeing those guys kind of in their swan song, it would have been cool for them to at least get a little further. And to knock your pick out a little earlier than I was hoping. But yeah, that was another not as much of a surprise, but kind of a letdown for me, especially in 2.
A disappointment, yeah, for sure. I'm honestly surprised only one series went to 3, but I am grateful that my dark horse back when we made our preseason predictions, our spring training predictions, ended up somehow going farther than your Mets. So I don't know how it worked, but I guess I have to feel all right about it. But this Phillies lineup still leaves a lot to be desired. I mean, they only had 9 hits in the 2 games. So there's still a lot of issues there, especially when you're getting ready to take on an Atlanta team that is pretty solid hitting the baseball. They're pretty solid pitching the baseball, pretty solid all the way around. So they're going to have to figure things out with those bats. For the Cardinals, the one good thing was both Albert Pujols and Yadier Molina did get a hit in their final at bat, and they were pinch ran for. Molina was devastated. I watched his interview. It really sucked to see him going out like that. Paul Goldschmidt, though, I mean, he fell off a cliff at the end of the season. I don't even know if you have him as an MVP anymore.
Right.
I mean, in a must-win game, he went 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. Nolan Arenado went 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts. Those are supposed to be your guys.
That
Albert
defensive
Pujols,
play. Arenado going right over his glove. That was rough.
Albert Pujols isn't supposed to be your guy here in 2022.
Right.
He's just brought in to kind of have that feel good. Exactly. Feel good going away. He ended up being really, really good, but Goldschmidt and Arenado were the guys who need to and will continue to need to carry this team. Mm-hmm. I don't think their pitching's that great either. Honestly, I'm not quite sure how they won the division. It was, I know because the Brewers refused to improve their offense at all. Like you said, letdown. I can't think of anything else to say about the Cardinals than letdown. Let's move on though to the Phillies next series with Atlanta. Kind of just teased about it. I don't see Philly putting up much of a fight. Atlanta's better pretty much everywhere. You're not going to be able to have Nola and Wheeler come out and pitch early, so you're going to fall behind in that series. And still, Atlanta, they were pretty good against Philadelphia here in 2022. This series doesn't really intrigue me that much. It'll be fun to watch the Braves. I don't think the Phillies put up much of a fight.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. Again, the Mets really fell flat at the end of the year, but that's not to take away how good of a tear these Braves went on. I mean, they were off to a pretty bumpy start. And we were talking about it at the beginning of the year. Are we, concerned? And no, they'll get it together. That's no problem. But they really started to figure out the pieces towards the middle and end of the year. And they look good. Like you said, every single way that you can look at that team, they are better than the Phillies. And so, especially with the rest, I feel like the Phillies, their bread and butter is their starting rotation. That's kind of already been utilized a little bit. I feel like the Braves are just going to steamroll this. I don't think that it's, like you said, going to be the entertaining series to watch.
I might give the Phillies a game just because I don't think the Braves are going to rush Spencer Strider into going out and giving them 7 innings. Right. And just being really dominant. So I think Philly might be able to steal one. It wouldn't surprise me if they didn't, but I don't see it going more than 4 games in this series at all.
Right.
The American League, on the other hand, and yes, we're probably going to take a little bit longer on this next one for obvious reasons. The Seattle Mariners go to Toronto and sweep the Blue Jays. Game 1, just a dominant performance by Luis Castillo. I mean, that's what the Mariners went out and got him for. He's going to be their guy in Game 1 of pretty much any series that he's available to go in. Cal Raleigh hitting that home run in the first inning really silenced the Rogers Center, and they really never even got back into it. You had the feeling pretty much the 6th inning when Castillo's still getting better. You knew that game was over. The Mariners were going to roll, win Game 1. Game 2, on the other hand, was absolute chaos ball. Insanity. To a T.
Yep.
Mariners fall behind. They're down 8-1 in that ball game. And all of a sudden, the wheels come off for Toronto, and the Mariners wake up, got things going. that 3-run shot by Carlos Santana. Remember, his first at bat in that game, he missed a home run by inches, maybe inch. It was so close. They made the right call. I will say the umpires got that one right. It clearly wasn't a home run, but he didn't miss it by much. That got them back into it. I don't know why. I've seen on like 3 different baseball shows them calling that a grand slam. It was a 3-run shot. Mariners scored on a wild pitch before that. But that right there gave Seattle life, cut it to 8-5. Toronto got one back to go up 9-5. But then you got to that beautiful 8th inning where Cal Raleigh stayed red hot, getting that RBI single, and then J.P. Crawford putting one in the perfect spot. Don't like seeing anybody get hurt, so that was scary. Glad Bichette was able to stay in. Wish Springer would have stayed in. I don't even know if Springer should have been out there the way he was looking, though. But just placed it perfectly. Had the same vibes as Luis Sojo. I felt like that ball just dropping in, and fortunate enough that there were 2 outs. Everyone was going. Tied that game up. And then that 9th inning, Adam Frazier, who was really, really good, especially in game 2 in that series, getting that RBI double to score Cal, and then George Kirby coming in. And he had to throw a lot of pitches, but it was a good thing he was a starter. He's used to having those innings where you're going to have to throw a lot of pitches. Got the job done and just left Toronto really stunned as they watched what happened.
Yeah, I mean, you look at those players and they're like, what happened? Game 1, especially, I mean, that entire day facing Luis Castillo, they were just looking like, what was that pitch? What, like that was, it looked like a slider gonna run off the plate, and it almost hit me in the hands as I swung and missed it. There's no way to hit this guy when he's on. That's, like you said, why the Mariners went out and got him. That's why other teams were courting him. That's why we were so excited to be the ones to be able to not only land him at the trade deadline but for many years to come. And then game 2, you got Robbie Ray going against his old team. They know each other. Kind of knocked him off pretty early. Bullpen comes in, cannot put out the fire this time. It's
Seawald
looking
struggled.
really bad. Yeah. And then chaos. There's just no other way to say it. And the guys never gave up, listened to their coaches, and just did what they need to do to really just shock the entire sports world. I mean, everyone is talking about, you don't do this in playoff ball. It's not possible. You are just facing too good of teams on too good of roles with too good of pitching to be able to come back like that. And Mariners said, too bad, watch.
Mariners took a page from the 95 Mariners. They refused to lose that game.
Yep.
That's exactly what they did. Whether you want to credit the lineup for all of a sudden waking up, then taking advantage of the Blue Jays pulling Kevin Gausman a little early, in my opinion. I would have let him face one more batter, see if he could have gotten out of the inning. Or if you want to credit Rally Shoe in T-Mobile Park, whatever you want to give the credit to, it worked. And I think that this team was driven to get a home playoff game in Seattle. I think that was going to be on their mind the entire way. They were going to feel just like it was a failure if they didn't get that home playoff game. Now, like J.P. Crawford said, if they could win this game, they can win any game. You can't ever count this team out for the rest of the season from now on against any pitcher, any team. This team has a shot. I know everyone's loves making fun of the Blue Jays right now, Vlad saying last season was the trailer, this season's the movie. Well, it was a disaster movie, if that's how you want to play it. While the Blue Jays got to the playoffs, it was just a massive letdown. But for the Mariners, I mean, first playoff series since 2001, obviously, and to come out, win it like that in 2 games just to get a date with that team that won your division, those big, bad Houston Astros. This team's starting to roll. I wouldn't feel safe if I was the Houston Astros. While they're, of course, going to be the favorites, you can't overlook the Mariners right now.
Right. And I'm telling you, I mean, you're saying, people are kind of laughing at the Jays right now, but you look at how they played and how other teams played, and you tell me that they couldn't have beaten other teams, the Jays, not the Mariners, the Jays. It was that placement. I feel like do not count the Mariners out. They are that wild card, that dark horse that's going to be able to flip the script and say, no, we don't care if our number's a little higher than yours on our, rankings. We're here to play. There are no Oakland A's left to flop against. There's just good teams, and we're going to rise to the occasion.
There is a term being thrown around that it's starting to feel like the Mariners might be that team of destiny. Of course, that always gets the stomach turning a little bit, get some butterflies thinking about that one. But they're going to have a very tough series coming up with the Houston Astros.
Oh, yes.
It is not going to be easy. Logan Gilbert going in game 1 against Justin Verlander. Verlander's owned the Mariners really his entire career, except for he had a bad outing this year. We'll see. But Logan Gilbert was really good against Houston this year, a sub-3 ERA. If he can give them a shot, get to this Astros bullpen, which if you're going to point to any spot that could be better for Houston, it is definitely that bullpen, which the Mariners have got to a couple times this season. That's what it's going to come down to. If Logan Gilbert and the Mariners can steal one of these first 2 games in Houston and get back to Seattle, putting the team just 2 wins away from a trip to the ALCS, it's going to be tough sledding for Houston at that point.
Right. That's what it comes down to. You're in Minute Maid Park. You're facing the top of that rotation. If you can survive, you're going to be okay, kid. It's take every single at-bat, take every single pitch that you can, go as deep into those battles as you possibly can, try to get those starters off the mound and go at the bullpen, where, let's be honest, that is really the only advantage that the Mariners have to this superior Houston team. And so if you can just play the ball that you are good at playing, bring it back home where your top starters are rested and ready to go again against the back of their lineup, like you said, that's when Houston's going to be on their heels and really bring the fight to them.
Yeah, the Mariners were 7-12 against the Astros this season. So while, yeah, they won the series, people act like it was like 14-5. Mariners, they had some good games against the Houston Astros. And of course, yes, these 2 teams have not met each other since before the deadline. So the Astros have not seen Luis Castillo, who it sounds like will go game 2. And here's my bold prediction. Robbie Reyes sucked against Houston all season, right?
Yep.
He will very likely get that start game 3 in Seattle. I think he comes out and has his best outing of the year, not just against Houston, against anyone in front of that crowd. I don't see the Mariners losing game 3 at home. I can't wrap my mind around how that would even be possible. It's going to be exciting. I get to be there. I cannot wait for Saturday, getting to watch the Mariners play a playoff baseball game with my own 2 eyes in the park. It's a special time for Mariners fans. We're obviously loving every second of it right now.
We are.
Let's hop to the final wild card series. This one was pretty wild too. The Guardians sweeping the Tampa Bay Rays 2-0. I mean, it's what we talked about. Our concern was with Tampa Bay coming into the playoffs, that offense. They scored 1 run in 2 games, almost two and a half games, because that second one went 15 innings. They just couldn't figure out how to put runs on the board. The starting pitching was spectacular. The bullpen was spectacular as well. I mean, every run in that series was scored on a total of 3 swings. There was a solo shot by Tampa Bay in game 1 and a 2-run shot by Cleveland in game 1. And then Cleveland hit that walk-off home run in game 2. Right. Every run on 3 swings. That is baffling. But Cleveland, that's what this team does. They pitch.
Right. I mean, what did we say at the beginning? Cleveland has the arms to be able to do this. Tampa Bay, they are hurting right now. And I mean, it was entertaining to see such a 15 innings. This isn't football. We don't absolutely need scores to enjoy it as much. Yeah.
Tell
But
that to your Colts.
oh, well, still a dub, I guess, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. But you know, you got walk-offs and you got wins. Like I said, that's a very young, fun team to watch. And they're still rolling. I mean, didn't really have too much to worry about once their offense did what they needed to do.
Again, I'm sure they'd like to get more offense because I don't think the pitching is going to be able to shut out the Yankees or hold the Yankees to a run in many games. So that offense is going to have to wake up. But I want to talk about that ALDS matchup because obviously the one I'm most excited about is the Mariners Astros because I'm a fan of the Mariners. If you took that away, the Guardians and the Yankees is fascinating to me. Go back
Yes.
to early in the season. The Yankees fans say some not good things to Stephen Kwan. And then, of course, Miles Straw tries to climb into the crowd and fight Yankees fans. Yankees players have to go out and tell the fans to calm down. There's a little bit of bad blood. I'm not going to say between the two teams, but between the fans and the Guardians. This thing's going to be very interesting, especially game one. See how fans react to Miles Straw and Stephen Kwan.
Absolutely. And something else that I've been thinking about this entire time since I was making my bracket, and I said that Cleveland was going to overtake New York in the series coming up, is you look at Garrett Cole, and when it is top pitcher versus top pitcher, like starting pitcher duel, Cole falters. That offense is able to just rattle him somehow. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying he's not a top quality pitcher, but they're able to get to him when he feels like he needs to do more in the game. And especially with the Yankees and how they're kind of hurting, not as much as the Rays, obviously, but they're hurting roster wise too. I'm still even with the lack of offense in that first series, I'm still thinking that the Guardians have a very good chance to do what they have to do, even in the Bronx.
Yeah, and Garrett Cole is going to get the ball in game one. The Yankees have announced he's going up
Right.
against Cal Quantrill. Quantrill hasn't lost a start since July 5th. He's been really, really good against everyone, especially since the month of August started. The only game that his team has lost over that stretch was one to Seattle, where it was the rain delay. So he only went 3 innings. Can't really fault him for that one at all, obviously. This guy's been insane in the second half. The team's picking him up. If he does have a little bit of a hiccup, it reminds me of Chris Young with the Mariners years ago, where it just felt like every time he took the mound, they were going to win. If he had a bad game, the offense was going to explode and they were going to get the win. He could be on his game and the Mariners offense was just going to do enough. He was going to get the win. Somehow it made no sense. That's how Cal Quantrill's going right now, except Quantrill, a lot better starts than Chris Young, although Chris Young was solid that year for Seattle. But the pitching matchups are going to be fascinating in the series. And one thing that is going to be fascinating, besides game two, where it's Shane Bieber against Nestor Cortez, is the news about the Yankees bullpen.
Right.
Aroldis Chapman is not going to be pitching for the Yankees likely ever again. Missing a mandatory workout that he said he asked the Yankees, if I go, does that mean I'm on the roster? And they said they couldn't guarantee it. So he said, I'm going to stay in Miami. And they told him, okay, good. And that was the end of it. So while Chapman's not the same Aroldis Chapman, there's a little bit of drama surrounding this team, which already is going to constantly have drama because they play in New York. There's a lot going on for the Yankees. It's going to be a tough sled in there. This series is a toss-up for me. It's the biggest toss-up of any AL or NLDS series.
I think people are going to be shocked. I really do. I think that Guardians team just has more focus on where they want to be than New York. I mean, don't get me wrong. Judge wants to win. A lot of those guys really want to win. A lot of guys that are hurt and can't play want to win. It just seems like together, collectively, they don't know how to get there right now. They were getting there a lot better than anyone else in the sport not that long ago, and just figuring out how to get out of this free fall. I think that it's too much for them this year.
And the good thing about the American League is they have Wednesday off, where the NL has to play those 2 games in 2 days. They only have today off Monday, while the American League, they get Monday and then also Wednesday off. So that's a little bit of a benefit for those American League teams, especially those that played in the wild card round. That's why Luis Castillo is very likely to start game 2. But how about this breaking news? Pitching matchup for that Padres-Dodgers game, it'll be Mike Clevinger getting the start for San Diego against Julio Urias. So interesting decision there from the Dodgers, I think, while, of course, you can go with anyone. There it is. So things going to be very fascinating from here on out for the MLB postseason. We will know who will be playing for the American League and National League pennants by the time we record our next episode. So, of course, we'll recap all these divisional series and preview those ones as well. We are going to take a quick break real quick. When we come back, it is time. The New York Yankees, Mount Rushmore. We have taken 2 weeks for this. I think both of us feel pretty good about who we have on our Rushmore. We will talk about those coming up next here on the Kingsman Sports Podcast.
Since 1978, Rogers Key, Card, and Strophe has offered their clients excellent representation in all facets of legal areas as a general practice law firm. They're serving Thurston, Lewis, Mason, Pierce, and Grays Harbor counties. Our team of professionals' focus is on personal injury, family law, criminal defense and DUIs, estate planning, corporate, business, and real estate law. You can find them at budbaylaw.com for more information. Alderson's Awards West Printwares is your one stop to tell the world about your school, club, or business. Spread the word on jackets, shirts, hats, and more from Awards West Printwares in Centralia. Awards West Printwares offers fast service of quality products including screen printing and embroidery done on site. They offer a wide variety of advertising specialties at great prices and delivered right to your door. For a full catalog, go online to aldersons.net. For maximum impact, Aldersons Awards West Printwares is ready to serve you today.
Welcome back to the Kingsman Sports Podcast. It is time for the New York Yankees Mount Rushmore. Jacob, this one was a grind. 2 weeks it took, and it really took 2 weeks for me.
Yeah, it's hard. The Yankees, they have so many numbers retired. They're just running out of numbers to assign their current players. They've just had so much talent and so much success over the years.
Yeah, it's been a special team. Regardless of the era, they've always had success, except for, I guess, the modern era, the more modern era, but I digress there. Let's go ahead and start with this one. This first one is a no-doubter because they're bigger than baseball. Babe Ruth.
Yes.
If you ask 99% of people who are the first 4 people you think of when you hear the word baseball, Babe Ruth, even people who don't watch baseball, they're going to know.
Right.
The Great Bambino, or the Great Bambi, if you prefer to call him that. He's been unbelievable. His career was special. He's almost like this mythical figure in baseball lore that so many people never got to see play that are alive today. And yet we're all like, this guy's the best. He's one of the best. 2,518 career hits with the Yankees, 659 home runs, 1,978 RBIs, 1,959 runs scored, 349 or 484, 711 slash line. Led the Yankees as the Yankees all-time leader in home runs, obviously. I mean, it feels irresponsible to not have him on the list. It's one of those guys who he's probably on the Mount Rushmore of baseball history, so he's got to be on the Yankees.
Exactly. I mean, let's just be real honest here. The Yankees purchasing of Ruth's contract from the Sox was the catalyst event that made the Yankees into the most successful baseball team in the history of the sport. There's no way around that. You mentioned the stats. I mean, it just incredible what he was able to do. You read those numbers, even if they played a couple of years, they would have been on most teams' mountains here. And so a couple other stats just to mention. He started as a pitcher. By the time he was a Yankee, that was mostly past, but he did have a 5-0 win-loss record as a Yankee. 5.52 ERA. He threw 2 complete games. That's pretty good for a positional guy if the team needs it. 5 strikeouts, only allowed 1 home run. Had a 1.8 whip though, so we're gonna call that a wash. And then the awards. Now, keep in mind when we're talking about the awards and accolades, they were just so different back then in the 20s and 30s. He only has 1 MVP. Why? Well, because for most of his career, after you won an MVP, you weren't allowed to be nominated again. And so it's kind of unfair to judge him by, just the 1 MVP or the 2 All-Star games because, well, they made the All-Star game 2.5 years before he retired. So he made 2 All-Star games. They were the only 2 Yankee eligible games that he could have went to anyway. And then he also pulled a batting title in 1924. So not as many awards as we usually see for a guy with this kind of clout, the Colossus of clout. But it would have been different if it was, today's award system, without a doubt. And just the way he played the game. I mean, this guy was overweight, suffered from alcoholism, liked to fight back with opposing players and fans. He had the athleticism and the attitude of a beer league softball slugger that you definitely wanted on your team, just so long as they weren't limiting home runs, right? that was what he did more than anything. I mean, the guy KO'd himself on the outfield fence and refused to come out of the game, even though he had a concussion and bruised his pelvis. If you run into the wall and you hurt your head and your pelvis at the same time, you were going hard into that wall. Yeah. And then he refused to come out of the game. Next at bat, hit a double. Just didn't quit. Or, of course, the famous called shot. There's a lot of talk if he was really calling his shot or not, or just jawing at the other team. And that's something we'll probably never know the whole story about. But what we do know for sure is that he hit the ball about 500 feet. And it was the go-ahead run to win, that World Series game. And that was a sweep of a World Series. There's a lot of discussion on if he could play today or not with his athleticism and his lifestyle, if he could even do anything with today's pitchers throwing. But I don't know, man. If he was around today rather than back then, who's to say he wouldn't adapt and be equally as dominant with today's training and strategies as he was back then? Because there was no one even close in that era. He brought in the live ball era rather than the dead ball era. He literally shut the door on how baseball used to be, a strategic defensive pitching game where it was usually 1-0, 2-0, tie games. And it's like, no, we're going to focus on offense. These guys can hit the ball. The home run is going to be a thing. He made baseball what it is. I loved it. One of the writers was saying if baseball was America's religion, he would be the patron saint. He's a no-doubter. Like you said, he's on the MLB Mount Rushmore. There's no way around it. He's special. There's a reason that he is baseball lore.
Babe Ruth. I mean, that's all you have to say, and people immediately.
Yep.
I wish I could have watched him play. I wish there was some way to watch his games. Nothing would make me happy. If you let me choose one player to go back and watch, it's Babe Ruth. I don't think there's a lot of people who would really argue with that choice, but special icon of the sport.
Yes.
Another guy who you could put an icon label on is our next player, Lou Gehrig. And of course, when you hear Lou Gehrig, you think of that just awful, awful disease that affects way too many people. Hopefully, we can one day find a cure for. But Lou Gehrig, the baseball player, he was incredible. He was just unbelievable. Cal Ripken Jr. is looked at as that guy who just went out there and he played. No matter what, he was going to go out there and play. Lou Gehrig was the guy before Cal Ripken. You don't just get the name the Iron Horse for no reason. He was an Iron Horse. He was going out there playing regardless of what was going on. 2,721 career hits, 493 home runs, 1,995 RBIs, 1,888 runs scored, a 340, 447, 632 slash line, the all-time Yankee leader in RBIs. He played in 2,130 consecutive baseball games.
Right.
That's insane, even knowing what Cal Ripken Jr. did. He had 12 straight seasons of at least 27 home runs and 114 RBIs. And of course, that speech that you can always hear, the echoes. Lou Gehrig was just another one of those guys. Unfortunately, everything about him was cut short. His career, his life, tragic. That just disgusting disease. But man, this he's an icon with the Yankees.
Yeah, absolutely. And for similar reasons as Ruth, I mean, it was the same timeline. He started a little later. The awards are a bit skewed here. He was able to win a second MVP because the Writers Association fine-tuned the award, made it what it is today. And so he was able to get a second one there. He also went to 7 All-Star games and won a Triple Crown as well. He helped bring home 7 World Series rings to the Bronx. And like you said, 2,130 games. That record stayed for 60 years, and people thought it was unbreakable. Cal Ripken Jr. broke the unbreakable, but no one else has even gotten close to either of them. No one might or even probably ever will again.
No one will.
Yeah, they're not allowed to even get close. And his record was self-broken. It wasn't, I can't play. It wasn't, you can't play. It was, something's going on in my body and I don't know what it is. It's affecting my play and I don't want to affect my team. I'm going to come out. And like you said, we all know what that turned out to be, but very few baseball players are able to be grouped in the same conversation as Gehrig when you talk about that character and that integrity. And unfortunately, his illness and his death kind of feeds into his lore. But like you said, it also really cut short on a very, very special career. He was and still is pride of the Yankees.
Yeah, great person. I mean, you hear people talk about how great of a person he was off the field. I think a lot of people who were around him consider themselves some of the luckiest people on the face of the earth there.
Absolutely.
All right, let's now fast forward a few years down the road. We're going to get into our next one, Mickey Mantle.
Yep.
Another icon of the New York Yankees. We use the word icon a lot with the Yankees, but I mean, they're the iconic franchise. Whether you love them or hate them, they are the franchise in Major League Baseball. Mickey Mantle, while his prime, I don't think you can consider it lasting as long as some of the other guys. When he was at the top of his game, there was nobody better. He was incredible. So these numbers are a little skewed because he did have those numbers drop towards the end of his career. 298, 421, 557 slash line, 2,415 hits, 1,676 runs, 536 home runs, 1,509 RBIs. 1956, incredible year. He hit 353, 52 home runs, and 130 RBIs. He led the American League in every single category, of course, meaning he won the Triple Crown, which doesn't happen very often. And especially now, it never happens. So it tells you how impressive that was. Also, in the World Series, he was special. I mean, in his World Series career, he played in 65 World Series games. He scored 42 runs, hit 18 home runs, and drove in 40 RBIs. He leads all of baseball history in all those categories for games that were in the World Series. He played in 12 World Series, Jacob. That is baffling. I mean, you think about from when we were born, teams aren't even playing in 12 World Series in 25, 30 years.
Right.
He played in 12 of them on his own. Once the Yankees won 7 of them with Mantle at the helm. Another guy who I don't quite put Mickey Mantle on the same iconic level as Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth, because those names just, if you say them around non-baseball fans, they still know. But Mickey Mantle was as good as they come. I mean, you're going to be hard pressed to find a player who was better in their prime than Mickey Mantle was. And I'm talking about from the beginning of baseball to now. Mantle might be the very best at the top of his game.
Yeah, and I don't know. I might actually argue with you a little bit there, because he almost bridged that gap between those lost years, where we can't really go back and witness. I mean, you've got some really grainy, patchy videos of what those guys were able to do. But like you said, we can't go back and watch Babe Ruth like we can Ken Griffey highlights. You can go back and you can watch Mickey Mantle, and it is just ridiculous. And when it comes to like the sports memorabilia and everything, it's still surviving with him. I mean, you think that Mickey Mantle card broke so many different records for people, just connect with him. I feel like maybe you're right. Maybe the non-baseball people, they know, oh, Babe Ruth. Yeah, I get that. It's not just a candy bar. Lou Gehrig is not just a disease I don't want to hear about. Mickey Mantle, there's that connection there. You mentioned those amazing stats. He was a 3-time MVP winner, won a Gold Glove, that Triple Crown, of course. He also managed to go to 20 All-Star games. He only played for 18 years. A fun little fact, from 1959 to 1962, there were actually 2 separate All-Star games played. They were trying to increase the players' pension fund. But not many players can say that they've played in more All-Star games than he did MLB seasons. And like you mentioned, such a better postseason ball player than Ruth ever was even close to being. That was one thing that Ruth really, really struggled with. There were 1 or 2 series where he was on the ball, but a lot of times he really, really struggled in the postseason. And Mantle did not have such weakness. I definitely put him right there at the top.
Incredible legacy. I mean, all these guys have just such special legacies. All of them have an argument to be on the all-time MLB Mount Rushmore. All of them Hall of Famers. We got one more, of course, and this one's our more modern one, the one that you and I were lucky enough to grow up watching. I was lucky enough to watch,
depending on.
We got that Ichiro moment, but
yeah,
I was lucky enough to watch his final game in Seattle. It was a special memory that I'll never ever forget, especially listening to him come in and just listening to the crowd erupt, even though we knew, we're losing this game. I hope you guys do realize that the game's now officially over. But it's Mariano Rivera.
Right.
This guy is the greatest closer in the history of the game, the only one who even is remotely close, and he's still not very, is Trevor Hoffman. That's how great Mariano Rivera is. 1,283 and 2/3 career innings pitched, 1,173 strikeouts, 652 saves, a 2.21 career ERA. It goes beyond that. His postseason numbers, unbelievable.
Ridiculous.
Really unbelievable. A .70 postseason ERA. Yes, that is a 0.70. 11 earned runs allowed by him in the postseason. He pitched 141 postseason innings. That is just baffling to even think that that is possible. That shows the longevity of him. He never slowed down. His cut fastball, are you kidding me? That thing is the greatest cutter in the history of baseball. First unanimous Hall of Famer. Whether you agree that he should have been the first or not, he should have been unanimous. There's no question about that. He's beloved by every fan base. Watching him go on his retirement tour when it was his last year, and just watching every fan base just love on him. Let him hear it. Let him know how much they respected what he did for the game of baseball. This puts his postseason numbers into perspective. He pitched twice as many innings, at least twice as many innings as 8 of the other 9 players that were in the top 10 in ERA and WHIP. That is baffling. He was doing double what they were doing and still doing it better. Incredible and he's career.
A closer.
And he's a closer. 42 career postseason saves. Second place has 18. Only 1 loss in his 96 postseason appearances. Of course, it was a pretty bad loss in 2001 Game 7. Almost was a Seattle Mariner, but they would have had to given up Edgar Martinez. So all in all, can't be too upset. Mariano Rivera, one of a kind. We'll never see another one.
Yeah. Just an incredible career. It was a real bummer to have to face him so often there. But 13-time All-Star Game MVP, World Series MVP. I mean, he brought home another 5 for New York. I mean, we were talking about all these guys bringing all of these rings to New York. Most of these teams we're doing Rushmores for were like, oh yeah, these guys brought their only 1, their only 2. There were a couple we're splitting. No, each of these guys are bringing home enough to make Tom Brady jealous. And we're just scratching the surface. He had 5 of those Rolaids Relief Awards that they used to give out. Those were still some of my favorites. Absolutely. Last player to ever wear the number 42 as his own, and might be the last player to ever get it retired too, because he's just that special. Ask any player from that era. He will be the one that they feared more than anyone. If it's go time, end of game, who do you not want to see? What sound do you not want to hear? Enter Sandman. You don't want it.
Goosebumps.
Yeah.
Everyone likes to talk about Edwin Diaz entrance now. Mariano did it first, and his was so scary.
Oh, yes. Hoffman's was pretty good too, but no. Rivera's one of a kind.
So there is our top 4 New York Yankees of all time on the Mount Rushmore. It goes beyond just what they did on the field, of course. Honorable mentions, I had 4. Jacob, you said you cut yours down to 3. I had Joe DiMaggio, Derek Jeter, who was really, really close to getting on the list, Yogi Berra, and Whitey Ford. I mean, I could have had an honorable mention list pages long with the New York Yankees.
Yeah, I started with over 10. And I'm like, I just don't want to dilute the very, very, very special ones, because most of these guys would have been no-brainers on other teams' lists. And it's just insane how spoiled the Yankees have been over the last 100 years. So, I also had Joe DiMaggio, Derek Jeter, and Yogi Berra.
An unbelievable franchise. I hate them. But man, you got to respect them. Respect where they were at back in those days where that team was just terrifying from start to finish.
Murderers Row and the M&M boys, and just ridiculous.
Hopefully they're never there again. That'll do it for our Yankees Mount Rushmore. Once again, it is Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Mickey Mantle, and Mariano Rivera for both of us in this one. Next week, be another Iron Man. We talked about him a little bit. It's the Baltimore Orioles next week. going to be another fun one, but man, there is going to be a battle for that fourth spot. I can already guarantee that we're going to have at least one difference next week for the Birds. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have a very, very short NFL segment where we're going to talk about two teams, one from each conference that is in the playoffs right now that we don't think is quite for real, and who we would replace them with. That is coming up next year on the Kingsman Sports Podcast.
The opioid crisis is real, and many families are dealing with this insidious problem. It can attack anyone, from illegal street drugs to legal prescriptions. American Behavioral Health Systems is here to help and has responded to this issue with our Secure Withdrawal Management Center. It's specialized medication-assisted opioid treatment and detox for low-income and Medicaid-eligible clients. The time is now to free yourself from addiction. For more information, go to AmericanBehavioralHealth.net.
This welding program is centered around getting your state structural certifications. They come in, take the welding core classes, get their work done that is pertinent to what they're going to do out into the field. So the industry of welding is booming right now.
There's construction, there's pipe fitting, there's sheet metal, there's opening your own fab shop. Always going to have an opportunity to be a welder. We always need welders.
All right, welcome back to the Kingsman Sports Podcast. Let's wrap this one up with a little NFL talk. Jacob, you and I both looked at the AFC and NFC playoff picture. If the postseason, started today, of course, Monday Night Football hasn't been played, but it's not going to change anything either way.
Right.
So let's go ahead and start with the AFC. I think we both are looking at the same team to take out. The New York Jets right now would be in the playoffs. That's who I took out. While I did pick the Jets last week, I was very confident that they beat the Dolphins, and they beat the Dolphins all right.
Yeah.
I don't see that success continuing. I am bumping them out and putting in the Las Vegas Raiders. Now that might be a little bit of a hot take with how how bad the Raiders are playing, especially in the early going. I think this team has to figure it out eventually. Hunter Renfrow, I think, will figure out his fumbling problem. Darren Waller needs to be more involved in the offense. Also, Derek Carr needs to trust Devontae Adams to go make a play. I don't think they're throwing him the ball enough right now. But they are starting to get Josh Jacobs going a little bit. If they can get him rolling and they can get this defense playing a little bit better, which they did against Denver. I know that's not saying much, but they could be on the right track. And I think the strength of schedule for the Raiders, pretty much they aren't playing a divisional opponent. They're going to be the favorite. They should take care of business. So I think the Raiders are about to turn things around.
No, we were just talking. You said that the only thing that could improve your team right now is a quarterback. How confident in that pick are you feeling? Are you going to go pick up Carr off the waiver wire?
No.
Okay. I'm just curious. I'm also taking out the Jets. Like you said, they're off to a really good start. I don't think that that's going to continue. I'm, however, putting in the Browns. I think that that running back duo is just ridiculous. Once things calm down, there are not too many teams that are going to be able to answer to their 26.5 points per game. And they just got a new middle linebacker, Deion Jones, so that should already kind of bolster their already pretty solid defense. They're going to figure it out. They have a better quarterback coming back soon. They're going to have a good year.
Yeah, and they should have beat the Chargers yesterday. Jacoby Brissett could have ran it in for a touchdown. He decided to throw it, was picked off. And I will say one thing about the Jets. You're very high on Sauce Gardner, but you didn't quite believe in him against the Dolphins. I think he proved you a little bit wrong. So I'm going to need you to go all in on Sauce. All the sauce. Get lost in the sauce.
I am just pouring the sauce out every single time I am talking about him. But he can't guard 4 different people at once. And so I don't know. Dolphins, it depends on how long Tua is out for me. Teddy Bridgewater is a better fill gap than most teams have, but he's not one that you're going to go deep in the season and just put the team on his shoulders for 15 games. There's just no way.
100% agree with you on that one. Over on the NFC side, I almost panicked a little bit and took out the Packers, but I didn't. I kept my ground. I kept my cool. So instead, I'm going to take out the team that beat them yesterday. Be a little not quite mature, but I'm going to take out the New York Giants. I don't trust this offensive line. They seem to let Daniel Jones get hit too much. I do think that Saquon Barkley is turning everything around. This was the Saquon we were promised to see coming out of college. He looks like a legit top back in the NFL, but I also don't think this defense is going to be able to hold up. The NFC East is not as bad as we all thought it was going to be. The Eagles and Cowboys both seem to be for real. I just don't see the Giants being able to hold on to a playoff spot. And I'm actually going to go ahead and give that playoff spot to not the LA Rams. I'm going to go with the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals yesterday almost beat the Philadelphia Eagles, so that defense is improving, and this offense is going to get so much better as soon as DeAndre Hopkins is able to take the field. He's a game changer. He's one of those guys, as soon as they walk on, they're good to go. He's been working out with them, training with them. He's been allowed to do that, so it's not going to take time to get on the same page. D-Hop comes back. This team's going to get back on track. They get the Seahawks next week in the last game without D-Hop. I don't know if you really need Hopkins to score points against Seattle's defense, which has really struggled. I think the Cardinals are about to turn things around and kind of play opposite of how they have in recent years, where they start fast and fade. I think they're starting a little slow. They're going to get stronger as the season goes on.
That might be so, but there's not a lot of teams. I'm also removing the Giants. That wasn't just because they beat the Packers. It's because they don't quite belong with the other teams there right now. Like you said, that line is just too problematic, and Saquon is a tank and a half, and he can take that beating that line is forcing him to take. But Danny Jones can't, and that's not a good look. No, I'm giving it to the Rams. I know you said not the Rams, so I am yes the Rams, 100%. And their biggest issue is also their line, but it's not without hope for them. There's some injuries there. They're coming back. They're going to be better. Matthew Stafford is going to get better because of that. I mean, he's been struggling throwing touchdowns lately. And I mean, this week was a lot better. Cooper Kupp is just the best thing that there is to throw at football wise. He will make things happen every single time. And so if you're getting a little bit more time and allowing your quarterback to even look in his general direction, you're going to get more success. That defense starting to come together a little bit more like we thought they were going to at the beginning of the year. They need to get healthy, and they'll figure it out. No problem at all. So that West is just not been as hot as we were expecting them to be. But yeah, let's turn up the heat for them a little bit more as the season goes on.
That's going to do it, though, for this edition of the Kingsman Sports Podcast. Once again, next week, we will have the Baltimore Orioles, Mount Rushmore. We'll also recap the AL and NLDS series. They'll be coming to an end by the time we record our next episode, and preview the AL and NLCS. It's going to be fun. Hopefully, we'll be able to talk about our Mariners still getting ready for that one. Also, great. I think we're going to do a little bit of anti-awards so far this season for the NFL. You've heard of the MVP. What about the LVP? I think we're going to talk about those a little bit through the first 6 weeks of the NFL season. That'll be next week here on the Kingsman Sports Podcast.